What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. So as we get into Superior Spider-Man, again, we're kind of doing this little bit of a prelude here, but really with Suicide Run, it's really necessary. And that's kind of the cool thing about this is that Suicide Run gives us an idea of what Dr. Octopus is going to do in the body of Peter Parker. And that was really what was necessary about this story, just because of the fact that when, Dan Slott was kind of leading up to this whole Superior Spider-Man thing, that nobody really knew that it was coming. It was just Dan Slott kind of saying what he always does. Oh, this story is going to change things forever, and this story is going to change the landscape of the Spider-Man mythos, and nothing's ever going to be the same. And it was cool to see it for what it was. I mean, it was interesting to kind of, see how it all played out. But the very idea here was that we were basically going to see what direction the stories would end up going in. Of course, the idea that Dr. Octopus and Peter Parker have presumably switched bodies forever. And that was really the indication that was left here at the tail end of this story. Now, keep in mind, in the last video, we had talked about how with their bodies switched, the mind of Peter Parker was basically in the body of Dr. Octopus, who was moments away from dying. I mean, he was just right around the corner from death, just knocking on his door. And so really, Doc Ock had just kind of considered himself home free. We're going to go ahead and call him Superior Spider-Man to go ahead and keep it easy to understand. But Superior Spider-Man, he kind of considered himself home free, in the idea that he was like, well, I mean, our bodies are swapped. The body of Dr. Octopus is going to die. Peter Parker's going to die inside that body, and that will be it. Not only that, Peter's biggest concern was that Superior Spider-Man would go around and basically start doing things like reforming a relationship with Mary Jane Watson. And that was kind of the crazy thing, because fans thought that was going to happen. And in fact, we get that little bit of a teaser here. One of the first things we see is Superior Spider-Man spending time with Mary Jane, and the idea that the two of them are basically going to get together, or at least it seems like it's going to happen. She says, look, is this a date? The two of us being here together, is this what I think it is? And Peter, Superior Spider-Man's response is, yes, it's exactly what you think it is. We're getting back together. Now, from here, Superior Spider-Man's basically alerted to the fact that Dr. Octopus is broken out of his cell. And that was really the huge thing, because of course, Superior Spider-Man was always on the lookout to see whether or not Peter Parker was able to find a way to escape his confines, and that's exactly what happened. The issue with this is that, the body of Dr. Octopus, again, was moments from dying. And so Peter Parker does exactly what he needs to do, and basically just kind of jerks the body awake, basically, kind of bringing it back to life. But in this 3-minute period between the time that he dies and the time that he comes back, he basically ends up visiting his hometown. And what he ends up seeing are a lot of these individuals who had died. We end up seeing people like Gwen Stacy, Captain Stacy, the father of Gwen. We end up seeing these various individuals who have played significant roles in the life of Peter Parker, but all of whom have effectively passed on. No more so than that than Uncle Ben. Now, this is one of the greatest moments in the entirety of the Spider-Man run. I always considered it is. When you look at Uncle Ben is probably the most important character in the life of Peter Parker, despite the fact that he's dead. And the reason why is because when Peter first developed the powers of Spider-Man, when he was first bitten by a radioactive spider, he did what every teenager does. He got carried away. He made some foolish decisions. He kind of let his powers get the better of him. He got revenge on, bullies that were giving him a hard time. He did what any of us would have done. But in this path, he lost sight of the fact that his actions can also lead to inaction. If he doesn't act when he needs to, someone around him could basically lose their life. And that's what happened with Uncle Ben. And for years and years and years and years, Peter Parker was guilt-ridden. He always sat around and said, if only I had done something, Uncle Ben would still have been alive. But because of this gives Peter this kind of last bit to basically say goodbye. This last little instance to more or less just kind of walk away, to be told by his Uncle Ben, I'm as proud of you as I ever could be. You've become every ounce of the hero that I believe that you could be. You've done me proud with your actions as a hero. And that's really what Peter needed. That was the motivation he needed to keep going on. So what the story does is it basically just kind of transitions to, Peter in the body of Dr. Octopus making his escape to an underground hideout. But it's also this idea that they're initially caught up to by Carly. Now remember, Carly is the ex-girlfriend of Peter Parker, but works in the police department. And so the initial idea here for Peter is, hey, Carly knows who I am. Carly can help me solve this problem. Now, the issue with this, and this is where Dan Slott really begins to hit home with the idea of the whole body swapping thing, is that to Carly's eyes, this is Dr. Octopus. She doesn't see Peter Parker. She sees Doc Ock. She sees a bad guy. She sees a villain. Now, where Peter Parker tries to say, hey, look, I can prove that it's me. You and Mary Jane Watson are the only two people who know my identity. Carly just kind of blows it off and says, well, Dr. Octopus Octopus has figured out what's going on with Peter Parker, and the fight ensues. Now, of course, she's incapacitated pretty quickly. Remember, Carly is just a regular human being, no extraordinary abilities or anything like that. But in light of this, Superior Spider-Man basically begins rounding up the friends and family of Peter Parker. And that's why this is cool, is because under the guise of Spider-Man operating as Peter Parker, Superior Spider-Man basically says, hey, look, we need to keep you guys safe, right? Dr. Octopus has escaped from the raft. He's got moments left to live. He's one of Spider-Man's most formidable enemies. He knows that you guys associate with me. We need to find a way to keep you safe. And in the guise of keeping them safe, he basically turns them into hostages. And that's kind of the cool thing here, is because now he has lives on his side. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses, or even one of the biggest strengths of Peter Parker, depending on how you look at it, is that he will not kill unless he absolutely has to. That was one of the huge significant moments in the Renew Your Vows story during Secret Wars, when he basically allowed Venom to die. In fact, he really kind of killed Venom by really doing nothing, by just kind of letting the symbiote burn alive, letting Venom essentially die. His inaction just kind of allowed those events to happen. But in Peter Parker's mind, it was what needed to be done. It was basically saving his family. And so what ends up happening here is that when Peter and Superior Spider-Man come face to face, it's kind of a slight bit of an exchange here and there. Of course, Peter's basically in this bunker out in the middle of nowhere, in this huge, trash heap that, of course, belonged to Dr. Octopus. But the idea here is Superior Spider-Man says, look, if you want to play that game, that's the game that we can play. If you want to play this idea of, well, you know me and I know you, so on and so forth, the Superior Spider-Man basically gives the location of Dr. Octopus's hideout, sending them directly to Peter Parker. Now, to be honest with you guys, Superior Spider-Man's really terrified here. And the reason why is because Doc Ock has really had to admit on a multitude of occasions that Peter Parker is extremely intelligent, dare I say, as intelligent, if not more intelligent than Dr. Octopus. And because of this, what ends up happening here is, Superior Spider-Man's terrified of the idea that Peter will come back and reclaim his body. And so he's literally just throwing every single thing he can at him. Especially when you're Spider-Man, you can use the tools of the police on your side. You can use the Avengers on your side. You basically have every single hero at your disposal when you can go to them and say, Dr. Octopus is trying to kill my friends and family. You have to help me. They will go to the ends of the earth in order to make sure that Peter Parker and the ones that he loves are kept safe. Now, from here, this is when we get into Dan Slott really toying with the Spider-Man fan base, when we have Mary Jane Watson going to meet with Superior Spider-Man again. Now, of course, this is really just kind of, a couple of people bumping heads who are both extremely stubborn. Of course, Mary Jane's like, look, I can keep hassling you, or you can just come and answer the door. But when the two of them start talking, what ends up happening is Mary Jane just confesses her love for Peter Parker. She says, look, I absolutely love you. Like, I don't know if we're ever going to be anything. I don't know if this is ever going anywhere. I don't know if we're fooling ourselves. Who cares? But I love you. And what ends up happening is the two of them share a kiss. Now, for those individuals who were reading Spider-Man and who had been around since the events of One More Day, it was almost like, oh my God, is it going to happen? It was that whole will they, won't they thing. Are they going to get together? Are they not going to get together? Is Dan Slott going to finally come around to bringing them back together? Now, of course, we know that's not the case. And in fact, Dan Slott said on Twitter repeatedly, he's never going to allow Mary Jane Watson, or we're never going to see Mary Jane Watson and Peter Parker getting back together, just strictly by editorial mandate. Marvel editorial does not want that to happen. Marvel does not want those two characters getting together. They want to leave the past in the past. Despite the fact that a lot of people really want to see it take place, apparently that's not going to happen at all. Instead, the closest we're ever going to see to Mary Jane Watson and Peter Parker being a couple again is in the ongoing Renew Your Vows story coming out of Marvel right now. But what ends up happening here is Dr. Octopus essentially traces down, Superior Spider-Man. So because of the fact that Superior Spider-Man, when he took the different, friends and family of Peter Parker to keep them safe, he'd basically thrown them in a room in Avengers Mansion. But what ends up happening here is a pretty straightforward fight. I mean, it's really just kind of Dan Slott wrapping up a lot of loose ends. But between Peter Parker and Dr. Octopus, this is an insane fight. It's a fight in the extreme. And the reason why is because Peter's literally fighting for his life. If he ends up, losing this battle, he's going to lose his identity. Dr. Octopus will go forward in the body of Peter Parker, presumably forever, and there will be no way for Peter to regain his life. Everything he's been fighting for will have been lost. Now, the cool thing is that Peter is extremely intelligent, and he always has a backup plan. In this instance, his backup plan was to grab one of those little Octobots that allowed the mind-swapping process in the first place and reverse it on Doc Ock, meaning that, this bot would allow them to switch their bodies back to the way they're supposed to be. The issue here is that, again, Dr. Octopus is also extremely intelligent, and so because of that, he planned for this possible eventuality. And that's one of the reasons why Dr. Octopus is so formidable as a villain when it comes to battling Peter Parker. Dr. Octopus usually always plans 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. And so while I wouldn't go as far as to say that he always defeats Peter Parker, he would present a challenge for most anybody because he's considered so many different variables and taken almost all those variables into account. And so because of this, what ends up happening is that this bot cannot switch the bodies back. Peter Parker is effectively stuck in the body of Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is in the body of Peter Parker. And this is when the story seriously begins to become something special. What ends up happening here is that Dr. Octopus is sort of forced to relive not only the great moments of Peter Parker's life, but the terrible moments of Peter Parker's life. He begins to really understand what it means to be Spider-Man. It's not just traipsing around, getting the girl, having a great time, fighting on the Avengers. There's a lot of responsibility that goes into it because in Peter Parker's mind, every single time he went out into a battle, every time he went out into a fight, it was always fighting for the people that he cared about. It was fighting for his loved ones. It was fighting for his friends. It was fighting for his family. The responsibility that came along with those things. Dr. Octopus begins to realize the weight that is now on his shoulders. With Peter Parker effectively dying in the body of Dr. Octopus, Peter says, look, it's your responsibility now. You have that power. If you're going to become me, then you have to fight for the people who deserve help. You have to make sure that the friends and family that I know, you have to make sure that the people that I care about, the people that believe that you're me, that they are safe. And so what this does is it basically steps forward with this idea that, Dr. Octopus in the body of Peter Parker is effectively going to leave his criminal life behind. He's essentially going to become a good guy. And that's what makes this so great, is because this sets the stage for him turning over a new leaf. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people looked at Superior Spider-Man and said, it really is just a genuinely good story. In their minds, Peter Parker will always be Spider-Man. It'll always be Peter Parker. It'll always be a return to that familiarity, a return to that status quo. But when we get these small little stories, we get to see what it looks like when somebody else is in the body of Peter Parker. Is Dr. Octopus legitimately a better Spider-Man than Peter Parker is? Is he more intelligent? Is he more capable? Is he able to do greater things? And we'll see that happen. We'll see the formation of what will become Parker Industries going into all new, all different Marvel. We will see, the early formation of that company here in Superior Spider-Man. We'll see the introduction of Anna Marconi, an ongoing character in all new, all different Amazing Spider-Man. We will see her in this story. A lot of the things that you guys are going to come and notice with regards to the whole all new, all different Spider-Man landscape, we're going to see a lot of those things growing here in Superior Spider-Man and then expanding outward from there, going into the main Spider-Man series, as well as the eventual reboot with all new, all different Marvel. But again, this is really just kind of designed to show us what direction things are going to go in. And to be quite honest, I think Superior Spider-Man is probably one of the greatest Spider-Man stories ever told. I love the direction that it goes in. I love the idea of Dr. Octopus trying to be a good guy, using his intelligence, as well as the fact that he's just kind of a jerk. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.